desert. And so ideas from what we now call sub-Saharan Africa and ideas from Egypt could intermingle. So the Egyptian gods and the African belief in Orishas and Loas, who were demigods, each of which had a special responsibility, were not so very different. So when we think about the Isis and Osiris and and Seth and the other Egyptian gods, and we can link them in with these early African beliefs because the Sahara was then a fertile area and people could travel pretty freely. So the old African beliefs then reached Central America and the Caribbean, Haiti, Cuba, and the cotton states of Southern America with the slave trade. And the slave owners didn't want the slaves to have a unifying religion. If we think about the Hebrew people coming out of slavery in Egypt to their new promised land, it was their religious faith that held them together. It's what made them strong. And so the slave owners did not want African faith to keep their slaves together and with ambition to be free again. So they made it they prohibited any of the African worship, and the slaves had a very good idea. They knew that it was okay for them to go to the slave owners' worship, and so the Orishas and Loas from the old African faith got latched on to various Christian saints. See, St. Peter, St. Martin, and St. Anthony of Padua were all kind of double identities for one of the African Orishas called Elegua. And then Oya, who was the Orisha of the storms, was associated with St. Catherine. And then there was another Orisha called Yemanja, who was associated with Stella Maris, who was Our Lady of the Stars and the Sea. And in that way, the old African faith, with its belief in Orishas, who were demigods with great powers in special areas, got latched on to the form of mainly Catholicism, which a lot of the slave owners followed themselves and would permit the slaves to follow as well.
How did for example, with voodoo, how did spells start with that?
Well, the old idea that Fraser had in his brilliant analytical book, The Golden Bough, was that in the very beginning, human beings tried to control nature by using magic, spells, enchantments. Then, when they found that wasn't working very well, it didn't always do what they hoped, Fraser said that's when they turned to religion, so they asked for powers that were greater than they were to do the controlling for them. Well, then when they found that prayers weren't always answered in the way they'd hoped, again, this is Fraser's theory compressed, he said, okay, that's when they turned to science and tried to find cause and effect and to control things that way. So that if we go back to the idea of how do voodoo practitioners use spells, I think that they are sort of focal points. And a piece of very recent medical research, the kind of thing that you may already have had on the show and I maybe missed it that night, is that a great deal of research has just been done into the effect of placebos and the actual drugs that have potent power to heal people. And what came out of this research was that the patient's faith in the placebo could actually change what was going on in his or her body.
Which baffled the scientists.
It did, yeah. And I think that's one of the most interesting pieces of research that's come up in the last 12 months.
I think so, too. Maybe even longer.
Yeah. So that if we can take that across into how the voodoo spells work, then if the music, the dancing, the prayers, and the talismans and the little dolls, they're just focal points. And if your people within your religion have faith in those focal points, if they believe that a certain talisman will keep them safe, if they believe that reciting a certain spell will bring them wealth or love or prosperity, then a change takes place in the mind and body of the person who believes in the talisman, and he or she starts to behave in more successful ways. Let's go outside that for a moment and look at some of these brilliant books that are written by highly successful businessmen. How to become a millionaire, how to improve your life prospects. These, what we call in the UK, lifemanship. I don't know what the American term for it is, but you know what I mean. And if you read a dozen or more of these, you will find that the highly successful writers who put them together, who have given you this sort of lifemanship advice on how to improve things and how to be a success, the first thing that all of them say, and it's quite universal, is you must believe in yourself and your own talents and your own powers. You must believe in success before you can achieve success. And this is where the voodoo spells and talismans and religious services seem to work. They can take someone from being just an average person to a belief that the priest who has given him the talisman really has power. Now, what I think is really and truly happening is that the talisman only acts, or the spell only acts, as a focus for that tremendous power of belief, as we were speaking about the effect with the placebos, that once you believe it will do you good, you change because, well, let's think of it like this. The talisman, if you're driving a shift-stick car, the talisman is the shift stick. And it's once you've got hold of that, then you can put your car, which is yourself and your life, into a better gear, and you can get to the front.
These spells can be good and bad, can't they?
Yes, they can. And again, I think we come back to this whole element of belief. Some time ago, one of my favorite anecdotes, I was threatened by some character who believed that he had control over a demon. And this demon that was in a glass case seemed to have been made out of a coconut. And he looked at this and said in a sepulchral tone, "This is under my control." And it just struck me as so funny that I laughed and said, "If you send that thing after me, son, I'm an ordained priest. I will eat it between two slices of bread." And if you take no notice, if we look at somebody who's trying to aim an evil power at you, or there are cases, again, where it's aimed perhaps at a more than just an individual person. If that is regarded as real and serious and a potential threat and danger, it will cause trouble. You see, the faith idea, the belief idea, the mental power idea can work the wrong way as well. If you believe that you're not going to do much, if you believe that you're going to lose. When I was doing a lot of martial arts competitions, if I went in and I saw the other guy was 6 inches taller with a longer reach and 2 stone heavier, and I would suddenly think, I've got a difficult one on here.
Exactly.
And I'd lose. If, on the other hand, I look at the same bloke in another competition and I think, okay, so he's taller, but I'm stronger, I can take him. And if I go in believing I can take him, by God, I take him. And there's so much of it is mental, and maybe we kind of give off, especially in a contact sport like the martial arts that I enjoy. If you go in thinking, I can take you, it's almost like, it's almost as if a force, almost like this magic spell of the mind power, like the voodoo idea, that he sees, he feels.